Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Rena, and welcome to
Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode titled Introduction, Who Are We and What Are We Doing?
Sarah, what movie are we doing this week?
This week, we will be talking about What's Love Got to Do with It? And we are excited to welcome our guest star, Katy, who is the creator and co-host of Queen's Podcast, a show looking at women from the past with a boozy and modern lens. Welcome, Katy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I love Tina, so I'm excited to discuss her biopic.
Katy, before we get started, I would love for you to share a little bit about the Queen's Podcast. What inspired you to start it?
So me and my friend Nathan, who is my co-host, we've been friends since we were kids, and we just we're just a couple of theater kids not doing theater anymore, and we like history. And so it was like, what if we talked about history? There's definitely a lapse in the market. It's, as scholars might say, the history podcast sphere is a total sausage fest. So we thought, wouldn't it be great if we actually looked at like history for women by women? My co-host isn't a woman, but he is very pro-woman. So yeah, and it turned out there was an audience for that.
I am curious also, do you have a favorite subject that you've covered on your show?
I love Russian history. It is just insane. So anytime that I get to go back to like pre-revolutionary Russia, it's always one of the most interesting things. So yeah, like Catherine the Great and like Olga of Kiev, and just a bunch of crazy ladies, and I love it.
Olga of Kiev needs a biopic.
She really does. That would be an awesome story.
That brings us to two questions we always ask, which is, first, do you have a favorite biopic? And is there a biopic you would like to see get made?
Do I have a favorite biopic? I don't know. I have a least favorite. I hated the Bohemian Rhapsody movie because I'm a huge Queen fan. And like when I was a kid, I had like a very long hyperfixation phase on the band Queen and Freddie Mercury. And so I just so full of rage watching that movie with all of just things that are wrong. Are y'all familiar at all with Victoria Woodhull?
Yes, the first woman to run for president before we'd even passed the 19th.
We have a 3-parter on her, and her life is just insane. I think it would probably need to be a miniseries to get it all in. But yeah, I think she would make a really awesome biopic.
Was she also like one of the first women stockbrokers? I think I heard.
Her and her sister had like the first female-owned stockbroker business on Wall Street. And then they had a newspaper owned by the two women. And they were the first people to publish the Communist Manifesto in English. I think a biopic on her. I mean, there's something for everybody. There's feminism. There's a fight. Like, she was a huge abolitionist. So there's that. There's spooky shit. Because she was, like, when she was a kid, her dad told everybody that her and her sister could talk to ghosts. And so they were kind of like celebrities. And like, it's so weird. Her story is crazy. Definitely look it up.
Rena, can you give us the trigger warning?
Trigger warning. This movie contains depictions of misogyny, racism, drug abuse, spousal abuse, adultery, relationship abuse, Buddhist chanting, domestic violence, subnasal cocaine residue, and wigs.
Rena, can you give us the spoiler warning?
Spoiler warning. We are going to spoil everything, including possibly the major plot points in works of narrative art having nothing to do with this particular movie. Consider yourself warned.
Some of the sources used in this episode include...
I looked at some chapters in Tina's second autobiography, which came out in 2019, and I Googled inaccuracies in What's Love Got to Do with It and read a few articles I found that way. But more importantly, we have Katy, who recently did a full episode of the Queen's Podcast, a two-parter of the Queen's Podcast on Tina Turner. So we're very happy to have her and her expertise. And Katy, can you please give us a 360-second rundown on Tina Turner?
Tina Turner grew up dirt poor, and through her music career and her partnership with her first husband, Ike Turner, they rose to like Grammy-winning stardom. But it was a bad time for that relationship. Wasn't good, and she left him. And though we're now kind of going past where the movie ended, she ended up having this huge comeback, which everyone told her, you're too old to start again. And that's what I love about Tina Turner is I don't feel like she ever like made herself sound like, woe is me, this happened to me. She was just sort of like, she was on food stamps after winning a Grammy because she left Ike Turner, and she turned it around. Tina Turner turned it around and is one of the most famous women in rock history. So I just fucking love her.
Same.
Sarah, can you please tell us a bit about the movie What's Love Got to Do with It?
Of course, from our friends at Wikipedia and a couple of other sources. What's Love Got to Do with It is a 1993 film based on the life of American singer-songwriter Tina Turner. It was directed by Brian Gibson and written by Kate Lanier from an uncredited story draft by the late Howard Ashman of The Little Mermaid lyrics fame, and a bunch of other things. Based on Tina's autobiography, I, Tina, which was co-written by Kurt Loder. Brian Gibson, just about him as a director, he was a real, like, just a workaday director. He made a lot of music videos. He did a lot of things that were competently made. But also hilariously, our friend Taylor Hackford of Ray fame was originally slated to direct, and then he was replaced by Mario Van Peebles, who left to make the movie Posse. So we got Brian. Some of the actors considered to play Tina include Halle Berry, Robin Givens, Pam Grier, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, and Vanessa Williams. They were all considered for the part, and Whitney Houston was actually offered the role, but she had to decline because she was pregnant. And also the actress Jenifer Lewis auditioned to play Tina, but was cast as her mother, and was only a year older than Angela Bassett. Hooray for Hollywood. Laurence Fishburne turned down the role 5 times before he took it, because of how little you understand Ike Turner as a person in the film, but ultimately did take the role. Tina re-recorded all of the songs with Laurence Fishburne for the soundtrack. Angela Bassett said that she would have been willing to try the singing, but the truncated timeline that they were working on, she was cast a month before the movie started shooting. She was like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Take months of like, especially to get down like the cadence of someone who's still alive, you know?
Yeah. And you do not want to come for Tina Turner's singing voice.
Getting to hear the real thing. And I'm glad they erased Ike because his voice wasn't that great anyway. That's why he always needed to get a real singer.
So What's Love Got to Do with It was theatrically released by Touchstone Pictures in June of 1993. Both Ike and Tina disapproved of the many inaccuracies in the film. Ike, for obvious reasons, did not like the villain cut he received. Can't blame you, but you are trash, Ike Turner. Despite the brutality of what we see on screen, it was actually pretty sanitized compared to Tina's memoir. And Touchstone, just worth noting, was the film studio arm of Disney at the time. Tina was also pretty unhappy with the presentation of the violence and also wanted the movie to be a more nuanced look at her and Ike and her life. She said to Vanity Fair in 1993 that the filmmakers saw like a, quote, deep need to make a film about a woman who was the victim of a con man. And she said, how dare you think that was what I was? I was in control every minute there. I was there because I wanted to be, because I had promised. And then she added, okay, so if I was a victim, fine. Maybe I was a victim for a short while, but give me credit for thinking the whole time that I was there. See, I do have pride. Even with all of this, the movie was a huge hit and really kind of served to launch Angela Bassett into the stratosphere. And also help with kind of like Laurence Fishburne was working the whole time. But it certainly like brought him to a new level. And the movie had a $15 million budget and it made $61 million. So it was very successful.
And it came out in 93. So like Tina was still like even actively putting music out.
Yeah. And very engaged, with Angela Bassett during the process. She has spoken very highly of Angela Bassett's portrayal of her up into her death.
I mean, I knew that it was her voice, but I didn't realize that she like really got FaceTime with the person that would be portraying her. That's really cool.
Yeah, she apparently showed her how to do her makeup like her, walked her through like the wig styling, helped her with the dancing and the movement.
In the second autobiography, Tina took some real pride in doctoring the wigs herself.
Yeah, that's the book I read, her second autobiography. And I loved it. It was so good. But yeah, her wigs were their own character in her autobiography. They were, they made her life easy. And she even goes into like the history of like her hair and her mother and stuff like that, who always wish that these biopics for people that I love were miniseries instead of just little movies. Cause I was like, they could go so deep into like her relationship with her mom, who doesn't get a stellar representation in this so much, at least from the book that I read, was left out. Like she was so much worse. She had a sister, her sister in the movie had just easier to manage hair, I guess. And so when they were growing up, her mother always favored her sister anyway. And so that was just one thing of like, well, your hair is so tough to manage. I wish it was easy like it is with your sister. And like, it's a little kid that doesn't know, like, okay, okay. And so in her book, like when she discovers wigs, it's like a liberating moment for her. Like, oh my God, this is going to make my life so much easier. I'm glad that in the movie they mentioned the wigs a little bit, because in the book, they're their own character.
So I remember the first time that I heard the Ike and Tina Turner cover of Proud Mary. It was on my local college radio. And I'd never heard anything like it before. And
my first encounter with Tina Turner was MTV when I was a kid. The video for What's Love Got to Do with It. I didn't know about this whole backstory that she had. And I remember just looking at her and being like, I've never seen or heard anyone like this before. Like the legs and the attitude and the voice and everything about her. I was like, oh my God, she's amazing. And I remember being told that she had been around forever.
I don't remember a life when I did. Like, I don't think I ever have not known who Tina Turner was. I grew up in a very classic rock heavy household, and it's a sausage fest, just like history podcasting. And as much as I love them, there was Janice, Stevie, and Tina. That's kind of like so I always gravitated towards the women in the music. When the rare time that a woman singing came on in our classic rock household, I was like, fuck yeah. And so that was I've just always known who Tina Turner was. And I feel like I've always known that before she was a solo artist, she was in a band with her husband and he was abusive. I feel like I've always known that as well. My mom's a big gossip. And so I grew up talking shit on celebrities a lot. So I just kind of feel like I'm really young. I have a memory of my mom being like, that woman survived her husband abusing her. So we hate Ike Turner. And I was like, yeah, we hate Ike Turner. I hate to be like, because he was an abuser, but God, he had a tough life too. And he got like a very late in life diagnosis for bipolar. Like at that point, it was too late for him to. I think he got diagnosed bipolar in like his 60s or something. So it's sort of like all this time he could have, that kind of, it doesn't explain it, doesn't excuse it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things I found out in reading up on him, was that he was married 14 times.
14
Which
times.
I think
we don't know how many of them were legal marriages.
I mean, he would often pick his next wife while he was married to the previous one. So yeah, we don't know the legal ins and outs of any of these relationships, but I think, like the bipolar diagnosis absolutely is, like 14 marriages would be a symptom of that.
Sarah, did he do the double tailor, or were there no repeats in there?
I don't think there were any repeats, but I think also when you're talking about 14, the odds of repeating accidentally are elevated.
I think I read a quote from him where he was like, we just got married or got divorced in my community. Like, why bring the government into it? So, but, and there's even like questionable of like, was he actually allowed to be marrying Tina Turner, like legally when they got married? So
I do have like a human sympathy for Ike, but also
fuck that guy.
Yeah. Also fuck that guy.
Yeah. We contain multitudes. Ike Turner was a talented man. It just is not talented enough to look past the horrible shit he did.
So just going to posit a semi-controversial idea as we approach the day in which many people celebrate the death and resurrection of their Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Angela Bassett, is she a god? Like, because she's actually never bad. Would love to experience what she considers an off day in her life. It would probably be the best day of my life. I felt pretty meh about this movie, but I think that it has the human shields, not unlike Bohemian Rhapsody, of, just like the double human shield of both Tina Turner and her music to hide behind, and also Angela Bassett and Laurence Fishburne's performances to hide behind. But when I walk away from that part of the movie, I'm kind of meh about the whole thing.
I watched it when we did the podcast on her a couple of years ago, and I was like, I don't think I ever need to see that movie again. And I rewatched it yesterday, but was like, I know, and I don't dislike it. It's just the sometimes it feels a little bit like trauma porn, and it's she lived through it. I get it. And it's definitely powerful, but yeah, just sometimes it just felt, it was hard to watch.
We go back and forth between, it's like musical number beating. And it felt like we really saw those two things happening just over and over in the last half of the movie, up until she meets those two #NotAllMen at the Ramada, and they give her the room, which, thank God.
That happened. Yeah, and we think, is it Anne Margaret? I think her friend Anne Margaret ended up paying for her room because she couldn't, because she literally had no money without Ike. So yeah, that happened.
So we open on an adorable child, Tina, and I loved her little skirt and dress combo with the Peter Pan collar. She is in her church choir, and she is singing out with sass, and the choir lady is not having it and kicks her out of that church. And she walks home to see her mother leaving with her sister.
I have to at least commend this movie for being efficient in its storytelling, because we're barely done with the opening credits, and her mom and her sister have moved. She has been comforted by her grandmother about the fact that they left her behind, and we're in St. Louis with Angela Bassett as Tina Turner rejoining her mother and sister there.
Yeah, I did kind of hate that they rushed through her mom leaving and everything, because it's a kind of interesting story that just develops her personality. But I also do appreciate them keeping it not a 4-hour long movie. So
I appreciate that they stuck to an hour 57, including closing credits, instead of what a lot of these pictures do is say, it's a prestige thing. We can go to 2 hours and 30 minutes and then try to cram in every little bit of extra.
Again, if they want to redo this as a mini series, let's get some Jagger in there. Let's get some Bowie in there. Let's do the Who. Let's have a great time. But I appreciate a movie that can be under 3 hours. So it was a minute 57, perfect length for a movie.
Yeah. So we cut to Angela Bassett playing her as a teenager, but she hops off the bus to meet her mother and her sister.
Yeah. And her mom is really unapologetic about having left her. She's like, you were too young, get over it. And then she and her sister go out dancing, and she immediately runs into Ike Turner, who is performing with his band, the Kings of Rhythm. And like neither Angela Bassett or Laurence Fishburne look at all like Ike Turner and Tina Turner.
He is way too handsome to be playing Ike Turner, though. Like, because in her book, Tina's like, one of the first things I noticed about Ike Turner is that man is ugly. And then later she was like, but he's so talented. And so that's how she was able to look past that she wasn't attracted to him. Yeah. Laurence Fishburne, in 90s Laurence Fishburne, very handsome man. He was way too good. But I guess they can't really put out a casting call and like, send us Hollywood's ugliest guy, you know?
Yes. Ike Turner has done nothing to deserve having the glam up of Laurence Fishburne playing him. And I made a note here that I would rather Ike be played by a half-filled garbage bag with googly eyes taped to it and the voice of Joe Rogan. Like, that's how I feel about Ike Turner. And not like that beautiful wall of a man that is Laurence Fishburne.
Yeah, very handsome guy.
One thing the movie does really well without like underlining it, I think that it's a credit to Laurence Fishburne as an actor and choices that he made in his performance. He really, like, physically, the way that he touches people, the way he puts his arm around Angela Bassett, or the way that he kisses her in scenes, you know, just like the way he is with her physically has an energy of her being an object.
Yeah, she was just an employee.
Yeah. He's like, you have no inner life. You are here for the benefit of me. And the way that he treats her like a thing. And he treats everyone around him like a thing.
He was like, with this band, you know, if anybody was a little late to practice, he would find them. And like, he was very much a control freak with every aspect of his life. And as Tina becomes more and more of his moneymaker and his ticket to fame, that grows for sure.
And she's into him, as are all of the women at that club.
Yeah. Look, a guy with a guitar. Look.
We've all been there.
We've all been, we've all met a 3 that then you see that they're very talented musically and you're like, is he a 10?
Yeah, so she just sets her cap for him and she comes back to this club, and I guess when she went in before she looked like a teenage girl, but she comes back and her hair is very sophisticated and her nails are done, and she's bought this white drapey dress with the like leopard print Peter Pan collar on it, where it's not about putting all of the merchandise on display, although you can see where it is through it's like she's a lady in it and she's gonna sing her lungs out, and she does.
And Ike is very much a groomer because she's, you know, probably 18. Yeah, and he's a full-grown man who's much more sophisticated than she is. And then he shows up at her house and engages in like that groomer type behavior where he's charming everyone in, like, he is bringing them all in.
He specifically goes for the mom though, because he knows that that's the ticket. And in real life, Ike and Tina's mom were thick as thieves. And like you kind of see that here, how she kind of at first isn't really buying his whole spiel until he breaks out the cash. And then that's when she's like, well, come on in, you know?
Yeah, he pays for her time that she would be earning money at a job.
He says that his band members stepped on her flower bed, but we look out the window and we see that flower bed is fine.
And so I don't know if that specific scene is true, but it does set the course that I'm sure we'll get into later, where Tina's mom just she was not a girl's girl.
No.
Later, she calls her mom and is about to say, I should go there, and then remembers that Ike bought her mom the house, which is, a classic abuser move. We know that O.J. Simpson did that, for example, like got the whole family on his payroll. And it makes it very difficult for a woman to leave a bad situation if the whole family's like, yeah, but we're dependent on his money. Can you guys work it out?
Yeah. And, I don't know if y'all know much about Tina's life, like after this time. Her second husband she met after she had like her second, like rise to fame, after she won more Grammys and stuff. So she met him when she was like super, super famous again. They lived in Switzerland. And so they flew their mom out to their house in Switzerland. And the mom was just like, oh, thank God you found another rich husband. And the second husband was like, you think this is, he was a record executive, but she was fucking Tina Turner. And so it's like her second husband was like, you think this is me? Like, your daughter's Tina Turner. What are you talking about? So, but she just had it in her mind that find a rich husband and your life is good, and fuck everything else.
And he takes her into the studio and she's amazing. And one of the things I complain about all the time on this show to excess is whenever like they show an artist just kind of walking into a situation and being brilliant, because I think it undersells like the work that art is. And it also ultimately will discourage people from making art. But I believe that Tina Turner probably could have walked into a studio and been amazing right away.
Also, once again, we've only got 2 hours. So if we're cutting something out, maybe. But I never thought about that. Yeah. If they don't show you sucking the first couple of times you do something. Really?
Ike also gives her a full makeover, so she fits the image that he has for her, like a pimp.
Because Tina Turner's a character. Tina Turner and anime are two different people. And Tina Turner's a character that he crafted. And I think they do a really good job of showing that in this story, how when she's not on stage, she is completely different than that, like, just sex on legs that she was on stage. That's because that was a character. Yeah.
And she's like a great person in real life when she's not on stage too. Like she's a mother, and mothers, two of his children that get dropped off at the doorstep by one of those 14 wives, like, or even someone else, like, we don't know.
I liked how they shoot when the previous out of the 14 wives shoots herself, because at first you think she might, but just the way you see down this hallway and people running into the room, looking, reacting, and leaving, and rather than like showing a bunch of blood, and there's the question, is she dead? Is she alive? What's going on here? But yeah, Ike is red flags all over the place.
Everyone is telling her that he's not a good guy. And then, like, you're sleeping over at a dude's house in the guest room, and another woman shows up with a gun and then tries to kill herself in the house. Like, that is, you walk away from that relationship.
But he's making her feel special in a way no one else has. So She has no experience with men. I think lots of women fall into that with their first serious relationship with an older man that they have no experience. So they don't know what love bombing is. They don't know the signs of manipulation. And she was really young when she got with Ike Turner. They like we said, they've completely written out that first relationship that she had because she had a baby with the like drummer of the band or something. And then he just disappeared. But that's fine. Again, they needed to keep it to the 2 hours. So
another thing they do to keep it to 2 hours is somewhere in here she meets a BFF named Jackie.
I think Jackie was one of like the backup singers or something, the Ikettes.
Yeah, but there's also a friend she had, I think her name is like Rhonda
Rhonda was her ride or die in her book. Yeah.
Yeah. So, once Lorraine is taken to the hospital after this attempt, Ike uses this moment to put the moves on Tina.
Because what says romance? Then, hey, I know my ex just held a gun to your head.
Yeah.
But
do you want to know how good I am? Someone just tried to kill themselves over me.
Exactly.
So he just explains that that she did the worst thing that a woman could do, which is stop believing in him.
Yeah, he definitely plays in throughout this movie that he uses that fear of abandonment as what's the word I'm looking for? As a weapon, really. Of just like, you're going to leave me just like the rest of them did. And it's like, dude, relationships change. Move on with your life. Like, learn to cope with this better. But that is a recurring theme for that character in this movie of like, you're going to leave me like everyone else does. Maybe they wouldn't leave you if you weren't psycho.
He gets her pregnant. She has a baby. And she's listening to there's music on the radio as she is recovering from childbirth. We see Ike smoking a cigar while holding the baby up, which is amazing parenting. He has also at this point changed her name to Tina, given her the character of Tina. And he does something that, as far as I'm concerned, could get you sent to prison and not a court in the land would stand up for you, which is come into the delivery room with a camera while she's trying to recover from a difficult childbirth where she could have died. And then he's like, let's get married right now. Well, you're freshly like the placenta just came out and he's all, let's get married.
Oh, he didn't ask her to get married. He told her we're getting married. Yeah.
And in real life, this is just one of the many incidents of in real life, it's actually worse.
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, Ike was not present for the birth of their son, Ronnie. Tina wrote in her book that a few days after she checked herself out of the hospital, she discovered that the woman Ike hired to replace her while she recuperated was a sex worker using her stage name, Tina Turner, to get clients. So somehow it's worse than blowing smoke in your child's face and making a very young woman who has just given birth get in a car and drive to Mexico and leave the baby with her mother.
Yeah. Though in real life, when they went to Mexico afterwards, he brought Tina to a sex show. And that was not her thing. And so and like in the book, she was like, and nothing about it was sexy. But so I'm kind of glad they left that part out. But it's so sad because afterwards she told everybody, oh, Ike whisked me away to Mexico so we could get married on the beach or whatever. But really it was like they went to Mexico so he could also watch this sex show, but also because they're not checking the records that he's actually probably already married in Mexico.
And then we cut to, like they're performing and working, and he just puts so much pressure on her as a performer, like just constant pressure about what she needs to be doing and how she needs to be doing it. We're not seeing Ike do a whole lot of much of anything. And at this point, we also we get introduced to the two new children who get dropped off, who are going to become Tina's charge. And she also alludes to Ike making a lot of music that sounds the same in an artistic conversational way. And he doesn't like that. And we see him hit her and punch her and drag her down a hallway in front of the children. And it's horrifying. It's very, I don't know how this was conveyed to me through the way the children were responding to it, but it was just like really good kid acting being well directed, where I was like, I can tell by the way these children are reacting to this that this isn't the first time they've seen it.
Right. Because otherwise there might be like screaming, freaking out, like what's going on? But yeah. And that the fact that like their friends that are there are just like, oh, this again. So I liked that they gave us enough context so that we know this is a regular thing without us having to see much more of it. Because it's a hard scene to watch. I'm happy that there's really only 2 really, really bad scenes, and that's one of them. And so at least we got the point without them having to shove it down our throats, because it's hard to watch.
This movie did a really good job of showing how that's, like that was, like to your point, like just part of their lives and part of the deal of being in a band with Ike Turner meant that you were going to see him beat women.
Yeah, it was, that's a really good point, because there's a couple of times where people are just like telling her to just put your head down, just go along with it, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But in this one, her girlfriend, is that Jackie, is like, no, you need to get out of here. And then the next scene we see is just felt a little tropey to me, but maybe it did happen. I don't know. Like when Ike shows up with a gift for her, it's so, to us modern eyes watching it, it's like, oh, it's such a cliche of like the abuser showing up with a gift to be like, sorry about your face, here's some shoes or whatever. But it probably was an effective tactic. That's probably why it's tropes are tropes for a reason. It was probably an effective tactic.
We cut to what appears to be like a Dick Clark type show, and they perform Shake a Tail Feather, and it's electrifying. It's like the musical numbers in this movie are fantastic. Like you can really see where the director is, a good music video director because of the way he shoots these, and they're very lively. And this is a great sequence. And Phil Spector is there, and we have hey, it's Phil Spector.
On Queen's podcast, I have a segment that I do on Patreon called This Fucking Guy. And Phil Spector is on my short list. He is definitely on my This Fucking Guy short list. Like, ugh.
So did we know how bad Phil Spector is at the time?
I don't think here's the thing. We did know that he beat the shit out of Ronnie Spector, and she escaped from their home without her shoes on. So we knew that. We hadn't gotten to the point where he was like straight up like shooting women in his house.
Well, when this movie came out, he told anybody that would listen how shitty he was, that he thought that Tina was ruining Ike's reputation. Phil Spector spoke at Ike Turner's funeral. He gave an impromptu speech in which he criticized Tina Turner's biography, I, Tina, because of how she pictured Ike. And it's like, okay, well, it's point to the lie though. Okay, if it hurt his reputation, was I supposed to not tell people what happened to me? Like, all right. Anyway, that fucking guy. Let's move on.
Phil Spector just wants to record with Tina, which we get like Phil Spector wants to record with Ike and Tina. And he's like, no, Phil Spector just wants to record with Tina. And she records River Deep, Mountain High, which is an incredible song. And Ike is so pissed about sharing the spotlight with her. He is so pissed off. And then we get another horrifying sequence of abuse with the cake.
Oh, God. And you know what? I didn't know until like I started studying Tina Turner, because like I said, I grew up with her, but I didn't know like anime. I didn't know her name was Anime. I hadn't seen this movie growing up. So that line in Drunken Love with Beyonce and Jay-Z, I always thought it was weird that he called himself Ike Turner in a song that he does with his wife. But to now know that in that song he says "eat the cake" anime when he's talking about having sex with his wife, I am just like, what is wrong with you, you weirdo?
It's a really weird thing to romanticize Ike and Tina. I feel like it's like the way like white people romanticize Sid and Nancy.
Oh.
Two children come up and give her and ask her for her autograph, and she gives it to them, and this song is doing really, really well. And Ike is high and pissed off, and he orders a full cake, and he starts trying to force her to eat it, and it becomes a melee of sorts.
And it's one of these cakes that you see in the revolving thing at the diner where they look way better than they taste.
It's just horrible. It's really, really uncomfortable.
And then he slaps Jackie that's trying to stand up for Tina / Anime. And that's when Jackie decides to leave. But when she sits back down, because like it's one thing to be like, oh, your abuser does so at home, but when they do it in a public place, and you're a public person now, it's like he's just got a control kink or something. And then I think it's so telling when like one of the friends is like, just eat the cake. That kind of goes back to, if you're going to be in this posse, if you're going to be in this entourage, this is stuff you have to be comfortable with seeing.
Also, I'm not sure. I'm trying to pinpoint the first time that we see Ike going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They put it in quite subtly, don't they?
Yeah, they weave that in pretty subtly about what Ike is up to. So Ike has booked them on the Rolling Stones tour, which is where we get to see her doing Proud Mary. Yeah, it's great. She totally has the physicality down.
An iconic, like, I sometimes cover songs just become their own thing. And that is what we see with Ike and Tina's version of Proud Mary. Like, and I love that it had its moment in this show. I mean, of course it would.
Creedence is such an ultimate white boy band, too.
I know. It's like, it's nothing like the original, and it's great. Yeah.
And I was very concerned because they cut away from her performing that song, and I was like, "Don't you dare, movie! You're going to cut off this song! Don't you dare!" And then they came back to it and they finished it, and intercut things between it. But like, it's an incredibly, like, it is a really spirited sequence, and she's amazing in it.
Also, somewhere around here, Ike gets this mod haircut, but he really looks like what he's doing with the costumes are so well done with like the best and worst of the 70s, but his whole look starts to look like a cross between like Maude but also Errol Flynn, Peter Pan, Robin Hood.
His bowl cut is pretty iconic, and it looks, I mean, the way they did it in the movie, that's really how he had his haircut. I mean, I don't mean iconic in like a good, sometimes all icons are aspirational.
Yeah, they have to work really hard to make Laurence Fishburne look bad. And it was so much easier on the real Ike Turner to say, no, don't do that.
We cut back to their house where she is trying to perform the song Nutbush City Limits.
I love that song.
Yeah, it's a great song. And she is like, she's killing it. And she, like, I made a note here. She can obviously sing very well for Monsters because look how well she did with Phil Spector. So Ike, like, back off with your, she's not doing this well. And then he clears the room and they have a fight.
That scene. Everything about that scene was so hard to watch.
No, it was really awful. We see him almost strangle her, and then he rapes her in the recording studio while holding her by her throat. And there's nothing more to say about that. He sucks.
There's nothing more to say about that scene. It was hard to watch.
Yeah, one of the things where Ike Turner comes across as worse in the bio is where she mentioned that Ike wouldn't beat her with his hands in like a premeditated way.
Like he would make sure he had something else to beat her with because his hands were his moneymaker. He played the guitar. In her book, the first time, and I'm glad that they didn't depict this. The first time he beats her is, I guess we've already given a content warning up top, but with a shoehorn, like one of those old timey ones, that they would have had laying around in the 60s. That weigh like 10 pounds or something,
like old in like leather dress shoes to keep the leather supple between wearings and the shape. Yeah.
So I'm happy at least we didn't have to watch that scene. But yeah, it's brutal. It is brutal. But again, it kind of shows how when he, like, all the people clear out because they know they're about to have a fight. So like, no, she has nobody in her corner, I think is one, it's a horrific scene to watch. But two, it also shows us that she is alone, which then brings us to when she tries to escape and her mother just doubles down on that. Like, yep, you are alone.
Yeah. She takes too much medication and ODs and is attempting to kill herself. At this point, they're backstage and she's like going out of consciousness as this happens, and they're taking her to the hospital, and Ike is screaming at her, if what did he say? Did he say, if you die, I'll kill you? Or
which is just setting up the most brutal catch-22 on living with the guy. Not that she's not in that already. And then after she survives this, she comes home, and one of the things they show, and I think Tina Turner writes about that she was a very house-proud person in terms of, and the home always looked, I thought that the decor that she bought, that he was complaining about, looked like, it was really, it was like, nice for what, it was an era that hasn't aged very well, but it was luxuriant for it. But Ike has redone the house in like full porn swag shag. Like he reused Elvis's used rug to upholster everything. And like I would say over my dead body if someone proposed decorating my place this way. And he's wearing what looks like hot pants when she comes in.
I had to pause it. I was like, what is he wearing? With the little boot.
Yeah, and I feel like I think you could almost see like white powder residue under his nose around here.
Yeah, the house is filled with people, and he's like, you need to parent our children now.
And he's like, hey, next time you're going to take such a long break, let me know in advance. And it's like, oh, God.
Ugh.
This fucking guy.
Yeah. And she ends up, she takes a break and goes over to Jackie's house, and she and Jackie are so funny. They both start imitating Ike. Like they both start doing imitations of him, and it's very joyful. And Tina is struggling though, because she doesn't want to go back to him. She doesn't have an escape, and Jackie has become a Buddhist. And I love this for them. They start doing a chant together, and this opens up the pathway for Tina to become a Buddhist. We then cut to they're in a car together, and they have a hideous physical fight in this car, Ike and Tina. It is like, I think the worst we've seen so far in terms of bruising.
We see Tina fight back for the first time.
When they're on the way there, they're in like the first class of the old Boeing 747s that have the spiral staircase going up, and she's in a white suit, and he wants to get her to eat a chocolate bar. And I think in the book she writes about that she has chocolate and blood on her suit, but I feel like Ike thinks that he's still being romantic because he's trying to use her as a pillow.
But yeah, that car scene was rough, but not like hard to watch like some of the other ones because she is fighting back. And it's like the first time we really see that, at least in this depiction.
Yeah, and they get to the hotel and they are covered in blood and go right to the front desk and get their rooms. And they're like, "Do you need a doctor?" And she's like, "No."
Props to the makeup person because like they looked gnarly too. Ooh.
After, they have their abusive back and forth in the hotel room, and she grabs a moment to grab a clutch bag and run out of that hotel across the highway and almost get hit by cars running to a much less nice hotel on the other side of the highway, which, wow.
In our episode, because when she's running, she's in Dallas and she has to like run across the interstate, which Dallas highways don't do that unless that's your only option. And she almost gets hit by like an 18-wheeler. And so in our episode, Nathan was like, "Do you think the driver was like that almost hit her was like, is that fucking Tina Turner? Like what? Like what the hell?" Could you imagine just being driving around and then just like, "Oh, I was hit someone. Was that Tina Turner?"
Yeah, those highways are scary in Texas.
Yeah, they don't fuck around.
No.
But I mean, that took such a level of bravery, and I think they depict that really well in this when she's in the lobby and she's so nervous that someone's going to see her and recognize her and out her that she doesn't even go out the front door. She goes through the door, like in the back for the staff, and is just so in such fight or flight. It's like, well, I either escape, I get killed by Ike, or I get killed running across this busy highway. And I think they depicted that really well. I could definitely feel the anxiety coming off of her. And then when she gets to the hotel trying to be like, "Here, take one of my rings or something as collateral," I thought that was a really effective performance.
It was a very moving scene because to your point, like you felt like the life or death stakes of it. And I'm like, and I'm watching it. I'm like, I know what happens.
Thank God she made it across that highway.
And then smash cut to 1977, and we're finally getting a divorce. And Ike is being totally insane and druggy in the courtroom. And then they make the deal where Ike is going to get everything except her name.
Yeah. And that was a huge deal. And I don't think if she wasn't able to get her name, I don't think she would have been able to really have the resurgence that she did because everyone knew they were Grammy winners at this point. Everyone knew Tina Turner. So if she had to start her career, which was already a struggle to revive as Anna Mae, people would be like, name recognition is such a big deal.
Yeah.
Though in real life, she did also get a Rolls Royce. That's all she got was her name and a Rolls Royce.
Still not a lot to work with, especially because she had the kids.
Ike owned 100% of the music. Ike owned everything. She never had access to their bank account. She didn't even have her name, I don't even think was on the account. So it's not like she had any claim to any of the money. And also she ran away in the middle of a tour. And so they had to cancel the tour. So she had to pay back the losses from the canceled tour dates out of her own money. And that's something she decided to do. And that's why she was. And then she also had the kids and had to now get her own house and pay bills for the first time. And that's why she was on food stamps and playing these rinky-dink shows like we're about to see her play.
I feel like, I mean, what you've just described, like, I feel like they really underplay.
They underplay her struggle because it's just sort of like they show her doing this one kind of rinky-dink show, and then they're like, "Oh, there's a record executive in the audience," and then the next thing you know, she blows up. She was going on Password. She was going on Hollywood Squares. She was playing in like random clubs. That woman for the next like 3 or 4 years was taking like any gig that paid. It didn't matter how quote unquote not prestigious or whatever. Like you could have been like, "We need somebody to play at this prom. Pays $300." She would have been like, "I'm there."
Can you imagine if Tina Turner turns up to sing your late 70s prom?
I feel like they do undersell the comeback in this show. But again, it's a lot of story for not a lot of time.
So she meets Roger Davies, who will become her manager, but Roger Davies would ultimately manage her until 2010. So this was the start of a really long relationship. And she is, like starting to like crawl her way back and really climb her way back. And then Ike shows up and wants to get Tina to come back and record another album so he doesn't go to prison.
And they've segued into, I guess I'm the wardrobe obsessive here. They've segued into the 80s really well because she's wearing this like big sleeved acid washed jean jacket.
Right. Yeah. It's a very, very 80s look for sure. Yeah. And she was, I mean, her whole aesthetic was like in the 80s. It was a very recognizable aesthetic.
She goes home and she has all of her kids there, and finds out that Ike is threatening to have her killed.
And Ike has made a very unconvincing come back to me proposal where it's like so perfunctory, and then it turns out he owes the record company, and he gives her this bouquet of like red roses with white baby's breath that looks like he got it at the gas station.
That was class in the 80s, though.
Yeah, I guess. To me, it looks like gas station flowers.
And yeah, like she's in a ton of danger at this point. I'm very glad that he wasn't able to do harm to her because, as we know, the most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive relationship is immediately after she leaves it. So, like I was like, again, like I know what happens, and yet still I'm like, oh my God, you're in so much danger, Tina. And we find out that Roger has booked her at what would become a really iconic performance, or set of performances at the Ritz in New York, which like saw like tons of like famous people dropping in to see her perform again. And she's performing all of this new solo material. And Ike shows up again in her dressing room. Dude is just like a bad penny. And he pulls a gun on her and says he's going to kill her. And she just is like, no, you're not. And walks out, and it's done. This never happened.
Yeah, she's like, you don't have the balls.
Which, yeah. This never happened, but Tina herself carried a gun once she heard about the death threats that he was trying to have her killed. So
Sarah, we've seen a lot of terrible romantic partners this is episode 51. So we are coming up on a year's worth of podcasts. So because I wrote when we did Respect, you said that Ted White, Aretha Franklin's husband, was Ike Turner without the talent.
I stand by that.
Where do you put Ike Turner in the ladder of horrible partners?
I mean, I would say like Paul Snider is the worst that we've seen, I believe. I would say that Ike Turner is just below that because he didn't commit the murder.
No.
But he took everything from this woman. In their time together, he abused her and he treated her horribly, and he took advantage of her talent and rode her coattails and made it look like him. And took everything from her in terms of the money. And I think that that's pretty evil.
So, Katy, what do you have to say to wrap up?
I think regardless of accuracy and stuff like that, the good thing about movies like this is it was a huge success, and so it's still considered a classic. So people might find it and then go and learn about Tina Turner and her music and her story on their own. So it's not so egregious to the point, like the parts that I didn't like about it, I didn't dislike so much that I was like, don't watch it. And I think it's properly disclaimed with like, hey, watch out. Like, if I feel like everybody knows that it's going to be hard to watch. I think it has a good message. I know Tina said that what she didn't like about the movie was that she was portrayed as just a perpetual victim. And I don't know that I mean, it's her story, so she can say what she wants. But from watching it, I don't think I agree, because she's not a victim in the end. And she does fight back. She was just so young when it started. So I'm not going to say I don't agree with her take on her own story. But as a viewer, I didn't walk away thinking that she was just a perpetual victim. So yeah, as far as biopics go, I've definitely seen more offensive ones. That is not one of my favorite movies. I will probably never watch it again, just because the abuse scenes are so hard for me to watch. But I think it's, in the end, a good story. And yeah, she needs a miniseries, though.
Definitely. Because there you can have, like, Bowie and Jagger being her allies. And yeah, there are so many things where we're like, this should be a miniseries, and then we couldn't do a show on it because we can't figure out how to redo the format around something that isn't a feature film.
Can you plug your pluggables for us?
So Queen's Podcast, we are wrapping up our 8th season. So that's 8 years. And we are about to go on break, but we have a huge back catalog. So if you like powerful women in history, check us out. We're very active on Instagram, Queens_podcast. And yeah, ladies in history and lots of cool stories there. You can find us on Instagram, on Threads, on Patreon, a little bit on TikTok. But yeah, we've got a couple, like over 150 episodes. So if you are interested in women in history and you don't mind dick jokes, we are the show for you.
Awesome. Katy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, let me know whenever it's coming out so I can plug it and share it as well.
So
we see her triumphant performance of What's Love Got to Do with It, the song, and then it cuts to real life Tina and starts talking about her accomplishments to date in 1993, which wouldn't be the full scope of her accomplishments. She toured for the most part for the rest of her life, like constantly performing, consummate professional. I feel like this movie is very much a product of its time. I think it's a really paint by numbers biopic. And I think that it's sort of like, it's a demonstration of how the genre hadn't become what it would become, in terms of like really exploring the space and finding unique ways to tell the story, because it is a very straightforward look at a portion of her life, that fails to really go outside the boundaries of that time period, or, kind of explain her in a more multitudinous way. Like, I didn't like seeing her get beat up repeatedly. And, just some of the things that we were talking about, like the way that she escaped and the way that she scraped by.
Mm-hmm.
Is really interesting. Like, I was thinking about like what I would rather see. And I think like Tina doesn't play a victim, but she was a victim of domestic violence. And I think that this movie is so laser focused on that victimization. Mm-hmm. And it's a bummer, because I think like after 1977, she lived an amazing life and she seemed to have an awful lot of joy in her life.
Yeah, and her story with like the European second husband is amazing because he first proposed when he proposed to her, she she was like, I can't do this the first time, and then he proposed to her again 25 years later.
Like,
And it sounds like her second wedding was amazing because she wore black and green Armani, but had all the guests wear white.
oh God, she fell in love properly, and she was a mother, and she was an actress. And like, as we mentioned, best part of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. She just seemed like she really, like, as a human, sucked the marrow out of life. And I would have liked to experience more of that and have the Ike portion be, maybe it's in flashbacks or something. Like, I would love like an Elton John style, like Rocket Man type of movie about her life. Just like where we could see the multitudes of who she was as an artist. And, like Mick Jagger looks like, if you ever watch him and her perform together, like he looks like he is in love with her. And I don't blame him. And if you're cool enough to have Mick Jagger fall in love with you, like, I want to see more of your story.
Yeah, in terms of, I guess this came out this was a few years after The Doors. So, Sarah, I think we have some awards talk this week. Okay.
So this movie was a really big moment for Angela Bassett and Laurence Fishburne. There was a quote about Gene Hackman from, like, someone was paying tribute to him after he died, which was essentially that Gene Hackman worked hard to make every project he was in worthy of having Gene Hackman in it. And I feel the same way about both of these two actors. Like, this was a much deserved moment for both of them. It launched them to a next level. Like, I don't remember a time that Laurence Fishburne wasn't famous, probably because he played Cowboy Curtis on Pee-wee's Playhouse.
You probably watched Pee-wee's Playhouse long before you saw Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
The movie where he said, I was hired at 14 to play an 18-year-old, and by the time it finished filming, I was 18.
Yep. I do remember the time before Angela Bassett, and this being the big breakout role for her. They were both nominated for Oscars for this and for Golden Globes. And she won for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy, which tracks because, as we've discussed, this movie was hilarious. Angela Bassett was a grad from Yale School of Drama, and she worked on stage from 1983 forward. And she had just started to break into film. She had just played Betty Shabazz in Malcolm X, and she was in Boys in the Hood. And to this day, since this time, she has been a very, very busy artist. And if you spend just a minute on her IMDb or on the internet, she works constantly. And she's also married to Courtney B. Vance, who she met at Yale School of Drama, and then they got together 10 years later, which is really cute. And then just on Laurence Fishburne, you mentioned Apocalypse Now. He grew up in Park Slope, Brooklyn.
The People's Republic of Park Slope.
Indeed. And as you mentioned, he spent several years in the jungle with Brando, Coppola, and is so drunk that he had a heart attack, Martin Sheen. And then he also worked steadily, worked his ass off for the next decade in guest roles, small parts. And he was also cast in Boys in the Hood, which brought him up a level, and his career really shot into the stratosphere from there. Like, he has done everything: stage, screen, television. He's another actor who works constantly and always brings his A game to everything. I want to share two firsts. One first about Laurence Fishburne that took me aback. He was the first Black actor to play Othello on screen.
Oh my.
And then another first about Angela Bassett that took me aback was that when she was in high school, she was the first Black student to be named to the National Honor Society at her high school. So in terms of awards, though, they were both nominated. This was a very tough year for either of them to win. Holly Hunter swept everything for The Piano. Tom Hanks swept everything for Philadelphia. And then a little movie called Schindler's List came out that year. So like the awards were locked up at that point, but you know, they both deserved it. I think that they are both like, they elevate the material to a point where, you know, where it seems better than what it is, because they are both such tremendous actors. And I think that they're both, yeah, like obviously like I mean, Angela Bassett got nominated for an Oscar for a Marvel movie.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Like she's that good. So that's awards talk for this evening. It's not as long as the Alamo. Okay. Shall end with that. Did you have any choice dialogue?
I did. My two pieces of dialogue. I don't know if one of them is something that the judge just happened to say, and the other, again, is something that Tina Turner says, but my two pieces of dialogue were: Mrs. Turner will retain the use of her stage name, and we never, ever do nothing nice and easy. We always do it nice and rough.
I mean, that song, like, I didn't even know there was another version of it until, I mean, it wasn't a week ago, but it definitely was long after I knew about their version of it that I found out. I was like, oh, Creedence wrote this song?
Sarah, can you please give our listeners a quick refresher about how we score movies?
I would be happy to. We rate movies on a scale of 1 to 10 across areas that we find to be subjectively and or objectively important to most films, but specially tailored to the specific issues in biopics. If you want more details on how we score movies, please scroll down our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com. You'll also find a record of our scores for past episodes. And with that out of the way, let's score this thing.
Okay. So I will read mine off first. For outward appearances, makeup and hair, I gave it a 9. For acting and casting, I gave it a 9.5. For passage of time, I gave it a 6. For costuming, I gave it a 9. For quality of the script, I gave it a 6. For accuracy, 3.5. For storytelling, was it cliched? Was it interesting? Was it inventive? I gave it a 7, and I feel like you're shaking your head at me for this. I feel you objecting. I think I liked this movie a lot better than you did. For production value, I gave it an 8.5. For production direction, decision making, I gave it a 7.5, and for Do We Care, I gave it an 8.5.
Okay. So for me, outward appearances 9, acting and casting 10, passage of time, I gave it an 8, costuming, I gave it an 8, quality of the script 5, accuracy 3, storytelling 3, production value 9. I was really impressed with what they did on a $15 million budget. Production, direction, decision making 5. And that's mostly because I don't know how I feel about the end, having Tina come out and perform at the end. But you know, it's fine.
But I think that showed what a good job Angela Bassett did it, following her physicality.
And then Do We Care 9.
So what did you get?
6.9.
Okay. So my number comes to 7.45. What did you get, Sarah?
6.9.
The combined score comes to 7.175. Sorry, what's love got to do with it? You did not earn a second opinion.
It's okay.
It's okay. We've had a lot of those lately.
Yeah, and that's fine. Do we have any retractions of policy, or do we have any retractions, apologies, or any listener mailbag to share?
This week, we do not.
We were perfect this week. Amazing.
Sarah, is there anything else that you would recommend? Yeah, other stuff that you should watch instead, if earned. I liked this movie. I thought it had 2 great performances in it, so I would say watch this and listen to What's Love Got to Do with It, to Private Dancer, if you want to hear a couple examples of Tina Turner songs, and also that cover of Proud Mary.
Yeah, I think, listen to any and all of her music. I would also strongly recommend just spend 20 minutes on YouTube and watch her perform live at any point in her life, and you will not be sorry. I would strongly recommend you watch her perform at Live Aid with Mick Jagger, just because it's incredible. And then also there's an amazing segment. Anne Margaret had a variety show in the 70s. Yeah. I mean, I just found out that the Grateful Dead had a disco song. You know, it's like the 70s were strange. But if you watch, there's a sequence where you see Anne Margaret and Tina perform Proud Mary together. And Anne Margaret is also a force. So the two of them singing that together, it's just absolutely incredible. But yeah, like I think like you're almost doing the music a disservice if you don't watch her performing it live, because she puts her whole self in. And it's just incredible to watch.
And with that, Sarah, can you take us out?
Of course. So first, our podcast baby has matured a little bit, and we have launched a Patreon. While we recognize that podcasting is a profiteering goldmine, we have launched this simply in an effort to defray some of the costs associated with bringing our show to you: platform hosting costs, recording costs, and research costs. And I want to be clear again that there is only one of us who actually does the work, and that's Rena. And she has to occasionally order a book off the internet. We also sometimes have to pay for movie rentals, which includes, like, for example, that we both paid money to watch Tennessee Johnson. Or, you know, we both paid money to watch a whole bunch of things that have been terrible. I would say that, you know, I mean, obviously what we've just described are the worst things that are happening in 2025. So if you do want to hop over to our Patreon page, it's linked in the show notes. And we'd also love to thank Gates, who is our first Patreon supporter. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Thank you, Gates.
And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends, and share us on social media. We hear it helps. You can also follow us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, where we have visual aids from our episodes. Our Instagram handle is @Biopic, a podcast story. So do check us out there, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Please also check out our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com to see the official episode ratings for all of the movies we've done so far. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at biopiclistenermailbag@gmail.com.
Tune in next week when, for the first time since the private life of Henry VIII, we will be dipping back into the history of those bloody Tudors with an even older film, actually the oldest movie we've ever done, The Execution of Mary, Queen of Scots.
I'm so excited to watch this.
Yes, it is a Thomas Edison movie from the 1890s. So there's also a conversation to be had about all the sucky things that Thomas Edison did to Nikola Tesla, the greater genius.
Do I get to call Thomas Edison an auteur?
Possibly. You should watch the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots first.
Well, with that, have a wonderful evening, Rena.
Good night to the earnest and the cynical, and good night, Sarah.
Good night.